continue. And the first one is called informed consent. Okay, so informed consent is essentially a conversation that you have with your patient. Okay, now all patients might not be able to provide informed consent, and they may have a substitute decision maker that's there to make those decisions for them. Okay, so consent is considered to be informed when the patient has been provided all the necessary information that gives them an understanding of what they're consenting to. Okay. The other thing that's important is it's not just a one-way conversation of you explaining things to the patient. The patient, for true informed consent, needs to be given the opportunity to ask questions and receive answers to those questions. Okay. That the form that we have, the consent form we have, is in the electronic health record, and that will be signed by both you, okay, and the patient. You as in because you're going to be the provider of the treatment, okay? So what type of informed consent documents do we need to collect? The first one that is collected at the start before any treatment is done is a general consent form. Okay, and that essentially has to do with the collect and disclosure of any information. So it's the patient is giving you permission to collect and store their contact information, giving you permission to contact them regularly, to book appointments, to collect if they have insurance information, things along those lines. Okay. The other part of the general consent is more so George Brown related, that they're acknowledging that this is an educational institution. The appointments will be longer than normal, that a student is providing care, things along those lines. Okay. And again, we'll be going through that in clinic. Okay. That for the collection and disclosure of patient information, you do require a signature. There are some informed consents that only require a verbal acknowledgement. Others require a physical signed signature. Okay. So the first one that requires a signature would be that collection and disclosure of information. Okay. We're going to be talking about medical consultations today. So in other words, incidences where you have to contact the family doctor to see if it's safe to proceed with care. Okay. In order for you to contact the family doctor, you need to be given permission to do so, and that requires a signature. Treatment planning. Okay. To formulate a treatment plan for the patient and any alterations to a treatment plan that may occur during treatment also requires a signature. Okay. So those are the three main ones that require signatures. All right. The other two that are considered to be good practice but are not required would be to sign for the try-in. Okay, so the patient would sign for the try-in, basically acknowledging that they've had an opportunity to try the teeth in wax, and that they are acknowledging that the color of the teeth cannot be changed from that point forward, or the shape of the teeth. Okay. So you might think, well, yeah, why would a patient need to sign for that? Or why would it be good practice to have a patient sign for that? Because it does happen that a patient chooses a particular shade or a particular shape of tooth, okay, that you might have suggested, or that they have decided to go against your recommendations and choose a different one. And then you process the case, they go home, and someone, friend, family member says to them, oh, wow, that's what they gave you? Doesn't look too good. They come back and they say, I don't like these. I've changed my mind. You need to change them. Okay. And you say, well, I can't change them now. Oh, well, you never told me that. Yes, I did. We talked about it at the last appointment. No, I don't remember. Remember, guys, and it's important to keep in the back of your mind, if it's not in the chart, it didn't happen. Okay. So that's one of the reasons why it's good to get them to sign for try-in. The other one is to sign for the insertion and patient education. Okay, we'll talk about insertion first. It has never happened to me, but it has happened that you insert a case, patient leaves, goes home, okay, then calls the office, doesn't really matter what time later, it could be a week, could be a few months, could be a few hours, and says, so when can I come and pick up my dentures? Or when can I get my dentures? And your reply as a denturist is, well, you just came on such and such date. No, you never let me take them home. Okay. Again, if it's not on the chart, it didn't happen. Okay. So what you have is you should have a signature that the patient paid in full from them. And with that, a signature that, yes, the patient received the dentures and that they're now taking them home. Okay, patient education is important and it's been mandated by our regulatory body that it needs to be done. Okay, what that is, and we'll go through it more in a couple of weeks, is that it explains to the patient how to take care of their denture and what to expect essentially in the short term and long term. Okay, anywhere between a few days to what to expect in a few months, in a year's time, and in 4 or 5 years' time. Now, part of the informed consent process is that a patient has the right to refuse treatment or withdraw treatment at any time. Okay, that means that you could be at the try-in stage. You've done all the work up to that try-in stage, and the patient says, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. Okay. Now, part of the informed consent process is patient is allowed to do that. Okay. But what they need to be informed about in advance at that very first appointment when they sign off that general consent is that they understand the consequences of withdrawing their consent. Okay. i.e., the health implications of it and the financial implications of it. So, for instance, okay, hold on just 1 minute. Okay, who's the, oh, go ahead.
Yeah. In case, for example, to get the grades until what step or what point, for example, like the patient just said, if the patient maybe it's in the try-on, for us to get a grade, what is the step that we need to finish?
You need to finish all points of care. So everything.
So if the patient said at the try-on that he can't continue with the process, we need to start a new patient from the beginning.
That is possible. That is possible.
Oh, okay. Well,
okay.
Yeah.
So that is not fairly common. Okay. It does happen, and we all work with you from that point on. So sometimes what will happen is, for instance, if you're at try-in stage, that you might be paired with another student to kind of finish off the clinical applications of that appointment. So you would still, if the patient says, well, I'm leaving, okay, you're leaving, and you're at try-in stage, okay, so you've done the try-in, that appointment's done. So essentially, clinically, you have post-insertions as well as an insertion to do. So you may be paired with another student to complete the insertion together. Their insertion, you would be added onto that case so that you could get a clinical mark for that. And you'd be given post-insertion clients, so adjustment clients, in order to finish that clinical aspect. The lab aspect of it, likelihood is that you would be given, you would complete your case and simulation, the case that you have. Okay, but every situation is a little bit different. Okay, and we take them on a case-by-case basis when they occur. All right. Does that answer your question, Itzia?
Oh, yes, yes. And it's nice that we can continue with working maybe with the thing that was not complete.
Yeah.
Like even if the patient don't want it, that is like to complete the process.
Like
Okay.
it really, it's a case-by-case basis, Itzia, because if you're already done a try-in and the patient's just like, you know what, I can't do this. I just don't want to do it. Or, you know what, things happen. They end up in the hospital for major surgery and they just can't continue. Things like that will happen. Okay. Not to everyone, but it does occur. Okay. It really depends upon what stage you're at, because if you were only at border molding and this happened, you would be starting over a new case. Okay. So that's why I say that it really depends on a case-by-case basis. All right. And we work with you on that.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. No problem. So getting back to the informed consent process and the withdrawal of consent. So patient has withdrawn consent. Okay. They can say to you, you know, I want my money back. Okay. If you're at the try-in stage and you're in your own private practice, you've invested a lot of money, and well, not a lot, but you've invested money to that point through sundries. Sundries is like supplies. Okay. Disposable things that you can't get back, the teeth. Okay. Your time. All right. So when you graduate, you'll be given a fee guide, and we're going to talk about the fee guide next week when we go through an insurance form and treatment planning. And what that fee guide states is that it does have a list of, if a patient were to stop care at a certain point, how much or what percentage you would give the patient back. Okay. Now that is a suggestion. All right. You may decide as a practitioner and say, you know what? No, I'm not giving you your money back. Okay. What you need to understand is that you have to make a decision as a provider. All right. Do you want to fight that battle with that patient or not? That's why it's so important in that initial general consent that they have a full picture of what that financial implication or relationship is. So for instance, it's fairly common that denture patients pay in stages. Okay. What does that mean? So at the initial appointment, they may pay 25%. Okay. At the try-in appointment, they pay, at Max Man, they pay another 25%. Try-in, they pay another 25%. Insertion, they pay back, they pay at 25%. So let's say you got to try-in. Okay. So they've paid 50% up to that point, and that day they're supposed to pay another 25. And they decide to stop treatment at that point. So you have 50% of payment. You could say in your general consent that 50% is non-refundable up to that point. Okay. Now, these financial arrangements, you have to decide what would be best for your clinic. Okay. Now, if the patient paid 100% of the cost up front, okay, and you're at try-in stage, you know, it would make sense for you to work with that patient to give them a certain amount back since they didn't complete care, since you didn't complete care. But again, any financial arrangement needs to be outlined to the patient from the very beginning. Okay. So when that consent is withdrawn, does the patient just walk out of the office and that's it? No. Okay. You need to document through a signed form that they are withdrawing their consent. They need to sign it. Okay. You also have to have a discussion with that patient. Why are they withdrawing their consent? Okay. Do they understand the implications? Like we talked about health implications, things like that of withdrawing that consent. And then they're signing that they understand that. Any other questions on consent before we move forward? Okay. So after you have obtained the client's consent, now you can collect their patient information. Okay. So this is the initial registration form that you're going to fill out. So what you're going to do is you're going to collect this information, and this will be posted on the clinical course Blackboard shell, okay, closer to when you start clinic. All right. And over the phone, you're going to ask the patient to provide, I shouldn't say over the phone, no. In clinic, when they get there, you're going to fill this form out. Okay. And then what you're going to do is you're going to email through the electronic health record client services to provide them the information. Okay, so last year you would just take the form to client services and hand it to them. Because of the current pandemic, they're not accepting that. So you would send it through what we call Axiom Messenger. Okay, client services will put that into the area of the chart called the patient card. Okay, and this is where the patient's contact information, so their name, birth date, full address, phone numbers that they can be reached at, okay, are placed along with their doctor's information, dentist information, emergency contact information, and any insurance information. Okay. So at every appointment, you're just double checking that information. At subsequent appointments, because in denturism, we do see clients, fairly regularly for the first little while. It's not just once a year kind of thing or twice a year. You can just say to them, has there been any change to your contact information? Okay. If this is a returning patient that was seen, let's say 3-4 years ago for dentures, you would say to them, if you're looking at the PowerPoint that we have here, you'd say to them, okay, are you still at 51 Dockside Drive in Toronto? They say yes. Is your phone number still 416-000-0000 and your cell phone 416-111-111? Okay. If they say yes, great. If they say no, okay, then you have to message client services the new information. Okay.
Yeah. In case, for example, Bethany, that the patient maybe it's not very well of the mental. It's not like it's maybe, I don't know.
They cannot provide their own consent.
Yes. So we need to talk with maybe a son or something for feel these things, because maybe he don't know where he lives, things like that.
So what that person would have is, if they are not mentally able to provide their own informed consent, then they would have what's called a substitute decision maker that would accompany them to their appointments. Okay, would be providing you with that information.
Okay. So for example, in the first one that you were talking about, the phone call, if the person maybe the person that is a take care guy and answer the phone, and I ask for, Mrs. Smith is there, is like, oh yes, but he's not able. Can he give me the information and then make all the signature and everything?
It depends. It depends. So usually, if it is your first call to them, there would be a note in the chart that says, in this area where you find the phone number, that please speak with the daughter, or please speak with the son, or the neighbor, or whoever, and they would give the phone number. So from there, then you're allowed to, if it's just given, like for instance here, Fred Flintstone, and you call and the wife says, well, what is this about? Okay. And you say, all you say is that you're from George Brown College and you'd like to speak to Fred Flintstone. Okay. And if she goes, well, I need to know what this is about, all you say is that he has not provided consent for me to speak to you about his care. Can you please let him know to give me a call back, please?
Oh, okay.
Okay. So unless the patient consents to you speaking with that patient, you can't provide any type of information to them.
All right. Okay.
So in the situation of a mental illness, for instance, that you were speaking about, that might impact the person's ability to give consent, that would need to be recorded in the chart to start with before proceeding with calling them. Okay, it would say, please speak with the daughter at this phone number. And that happens. And we also have a very diverse community in Toronto, where, there's a lot of individuals that English is not their first language, or perhaps they don't speak English. Okay, so a lot of first generation immigrants that might not have a very good grasp of the English language, maybe came here when they were a little bit older, but their children speak English. So you might be communicating more so with their children than with them, but that would need to be documented in the consent form.
All right. Okay.
Okay. So after you've collected that information, that patient's personal information, you're going to continue on with a health history. Okay. A health history essentially allows you to understand a patient's concerns, their attitudes, what their goals are towards coming to your denture clinic. Okay. It also provides you baseline information, so kind of a starting point. It gives you an overall kind of assessment of their physical and emotional well-being. Okay. Any risk factors that may, set off some red flags in regards to treatment. Okay. If a medical consultation needs to be provided. And again, it's helping to maintain the legal documentation, keeping in mind that a patient's chart, okay, so their health chart, or doesn't mean health, but their chart in your office is a legal document. Okay. Health history needs to be updated on a regular basis. So essentially at every appointment. Why is that? Because health status is dynamic. It's constantly changing. Okay. And that's typically done at the beginning of every appointment. So the health history is essentially an umbrella term that encompasses two things: a medical history as well as an oral history. Both need to be completed and reviewed prior to going intraorally. Okay. So this is a hard stop for you guys as students, meaning you've taken the consent, you then go to the medical history, you go to the oral history, and you stop. Okay. You cannot go any further until you have received permission to proceed from your instructor. Okay. Now, with the medical history, so this is an example of the chart that you guys will be working in, okay? There's several update questions at the start of the form, okay? Those are the questions that we need to be asked every single time. The rest of the form, which is quite lengthy, okay, you don't need to ask at every appointment, all right, but needs to be updated as needed. All right. And that will make a little bit more sense when we get into the clinical application of this later on. For oral history, okay, it's going to ask the patient a variety of questions pertaining to their oral history. When we talk about partial dentures, okay, partial dentures, we want to pay attention to when was their last cleaning. Okay. The general rule is that if they have had a cleaning in the last year, so the last 12 months, you can go on. Okay. If they haven't had a cleaning in the last year, or there is any visible signs of calculus, okay, you need to refer them to a dentist, dental hygienist, to get a cleaning, okay, before proceeding. The second thing with partials, have they had radiographs taken in the last 12 months? Okay. Now, this will be the call of a dentist, all right, but you should be aware of it. If the answer is no, they don't have any recent radiographs and there's been changes to the mouth, typically a full mouth series will be prescribed by the dentist. Okay. And you'll be discussing what a full mouth series is with Lily if you haven't quite yet. Okay. Sometimes they'll, instead of requiring a full mouth series, depending on the amount of teeth left in the mouth, they'll request a Panorex. Okay. As a denturist, for any partial denture client, you need to have in the chart a copy of the radiographs and a radiographic report from the dentist. Okay. That's a red star thing. As a denturist, you legally need to have a copy of the radiographs and a radiographic report from the dentist. Okay, we'll talk about in a little bit your role as the denturist and what radiographic forms you need to keep in addition to that. But those are the two main things that you need from a dentist. There's a medications tab, okay, that you're going to list all of the patient's medications there, their generic name, okay, their dosage and their frequency. If the patient is not taking any medications, that is included in there, and that you're clicking at every appointment that you have reviewed the information with the patient. Okay. If they're taking more or different medications, you're going to adjust that medications list, either deleting them if they're no longer taking them or adding them if they are. Okay. Now, this is all occurring in what we call an interview setting, meaning that the patient and you are sitting side by side by the computer on the back bench. The patient is not sitting in the dental chair with their back to you. You're sitting side by side. Okay. Now, in our current pandemic environment, that would mean you at the computer and them slightly over towards, not slightly, but more so over towards the sink. Okay. Ensuring enough physical distancing. And at this time, the patient is still wearing a mask. Okay. Now, some legal and ethical issues relating to the health history. It is considered confidential and it is protected by law. Okay. We have the HIPAA, which is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. You guys will talk about that with Evie. All right. It can be handwritten. It can be electronic. If the health history or the health record is handwritten, okay, everything needs to be in ink, blue or black. Okay. Any errors are lined out, initialed and dated. And any written comments, basically that the patient is saying, would be initialed by the patient. Okay. If it's electronic, it has to be encrypted and password protected. Okay. So that means not everyone can have access to the health record, only authorized individuals. Okay. And the client has to sign and date the health history. Okay, that part's important too. So remember what we said, guys. Patient comes into clinic, you're doing consent, personal collection of personal information, the health history, which includes the medical history and the oral history, and then there's a hard stop there. Okay, you cannot go any further until you receive permission to proceed. Okay, this is because as a student, you're learning your clinical applications under our supervision and our denturism licenses to practice. Okay. So let's just say you do the medical history and something pops up after the instructor goes through it and they say, you know what, we need to send out a medical consultation. Okay. If a medical consultation needs to be sent out, it means you cannot proceed intraorally with this patient at this time. It means that we need further information from their doctor, okay, because the condition that they may have, the illness that they may have, can compromise their own safety during dental care, okay? It does have to be a written request. It can be digital. It can be handwritten, okay, one or the other. For George Brown, we are fully electronic, so it would be electronic, okay? And basically, you're including in there the patient's name, your name, why what you're inquiring about, okay? And then a signature at the bottom. And again, we'll be going through those in clinical practice. So some examples, for instance, we have incidences of very high blood pressure. Last week, we talked about asthma and the yellow zone. So sending out a medical consultation if the patient is in the yellow zone. If they're about to undergo chemotherapy, radiation, different types of hepatitis, untreated HIV, or if they have full-blown AIDS, if they have active TB, uncontrolled diabetes, okay, stroke in the last 6 months, heart attack in the last 6 weeks, okay? There's a whole host of different things. There's no way at this point in your education you're going to be able to identify or remember them all because you haven't been taught them all yet, Okay, but this is to give you an idea of some of the major ones that you're likely to see. We have a hypertension advisory form. Okay, a hypertension advisory form basically is that the patient's blood pressure is higher than normal. Okay, but it's not within a range for denturism that you would not be able to render care. So instead of sending out a medical consult, you would send the patient with an advisory form. Okay. At the end of every appointment, you need to do a few things. Okay. You need to have all your forms approved. So if this is the first appointment, obviously you would have had that medical history approved at the start. Any forms during, okay, the treatment that needs approved, you need to write a note. Okay, a treatment note, which we'll go over in a minute. And you need to move your code from planned to in process completed. That part will make more sense as we get into it and get into more of your EHR training. Okay, and you also have to check out the patient. So previously, the patients used to be checked out at client services, and now they're checked out directly in clinic. Okay, so a treatment note is always written at the end of every appointment. Okay, and it's essentially a story of what happened at that appointment. Remember what I said before, guys. If it didn't happen, if it's not in the chart, it didn't happen. So this treatment note is a very detailed report, essentially, of everything that happened at that treatment. Okay, it's important that it's detailed. All right, and you'll find it in the chart under the treatment history tab. Okay, and you'd add a new note. So what type of information goes in there? Okay, everything from when the patient was seated to the medical history being updated, what was the state of the update, when did you receive permission to proceed, that you provided the patient with pre-procedural mouth rinse, any oral conditions or health conditions that might impact care that day, a very detailed description of the procedures completed. So when we mean detailed, and you see that that's bolded, guys, if we're talking about preliminary impressions, meaning that preliminary impressions of the maxillary mandibular arches were taken with size M stock trays with chromatica alginate. Okay, that detailed. All right, what things were you using? How were you using them, essentially? What materials were used? Okay, how did the patient tolerate the procedure? If the patient was gagging and there's tears coming down their cheeks, it would be patient did not tolerate the procedure well, was gagging during procedure. Okay, so you're detailing the whole procedure, and then at the end, always give the patient post-procedural mouth rinse. Okay, indicate any follow-up that's needed. So if we're at preliminary impressions, you would put patient will return, okay, whenever the next appointment is scheduled for border molding and finals. Okay, you're always booking the next appointment at the end of that appointment. All right, and the time that the patient was released from the chair. Okay, and we'll be going through these in detail again more in the clinical course. Okay, so for instance, we have an example here. Patient seated at 9 a.m. Waive dental clinic regulations reviewed with patient, and patient has signed their informed consent. Medical and dental history updated. Okay, patient, so they're essentially a returning client here that maybe hasn't been seen in a few years. Okay, or a few months, whatever it may be. Patient has recently been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, so that's taking the changes in the medical history in place. Permission to proceed with intraoral assessment provided by whoever it was provided by, and written consent provided by the patient. Pre-procedural mouth rinse given. Oral conditions were within normal limits. Okay, and then you just kind of outline there everything that happened in that procedure. Okay, then near the end, patient tolerated the procedure well. Okay, Post-procedural mouth rinse given, patient released at 12:30. Next appointment for, here we say x-rays, has been scheduled for, and the date. Okay, so every one of them is going to look a little bit different. And again, we're going to practice writing those in clinic. So there's some paper documents that are more so related to things that need to be sent out from the college. Okay, not so much internal forms. So our preliminary cast partial design and the final cast design, one being sent to the dentist, the other one being sent to the commercial lab, those are still paper. Okay, forms from other institutions. So some of the U of T forms, U of T dental school forms are still paper. They haven't provided us a digital copy yet of them. Others, Mount Sinai forms, Sunnybrook forms, Sick Kids forms are still paper. Okay, we have x-ray request and release forms that at the moment are still paper, as are the hypertension advisory. Okay, it's important, guys, that none of these items can be placed in your bags, your lockers, or taken home. Okay, it's a violation of privacy law. All right, and we do have or the school does have a duty to report it to the Privacy Commission of Ontario. Okay, or Commissioner of Ontario. Any paper documentation that is leaving clinic gets put in a box and collected by client services at the end of the day. Okay, and they will then, like anything that needs scanned or anything of those lines, would get put in the box. When we get it, again, more into clinic, we'll show you where that is and how to use it. Okay, going back, guys, to the fact that this is a legal document and you have now entered into essentially a confidentiality agreement with this patient. This includes you talking about your patients. Okay, so it has happened in the past, and students have had to have been disciplined for it. Is that, you mean well because you're excited about clinic, but you're talking to, mom and dad about it, and then mom and dad tell so and so, or you're talking to a friend about your patient. Okay, you can't do those things. All right, it's strictly what happens in the op. That patient's medical history is all relating to is confidential between you and that patient. Okay, and your instructors that are in clinic. All right, there's nothing wrong saying, today was a great day in clinic, mom, dad, or brother, whoever, sister. But you can't go into details about, what, my patient has HIV, and oh my gosh, I can't believe, whatever it may be. All right, that is private between the patient and the provider. Is there any questions, guys, before we continue on? Nothing yet? Okay. The next part is a little bit longer, so do we want to take a quick break, maybe till 10 o'clock, or do you want to keep going? Okay, so let's take a break till 10 o'clock, okay? I'll stick around if you have any questions. Hi, Fury. I'll check that out. Okay, I'll see what I posted. What I posted up there. It should be the same. Is there any slides in particular so I know what I'm looking for? Okay, I will double check to see which version I posted. Okay, I'll double check that. Thank you for letting me know. Fiora, if you would be able to, I just reloaded it on. It's listing as the same one, and I don't remember changing them, but I must have. So can you double check the one that I just posted up has that information and let me know? Thank you. Okay, great. I think I probably wanted to add a few things at the over the weekend, and I might have forgotten to post that up. Thank you so much for letting me know. Okay, so we're going to continue now with patient assessment. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. So after all the medical history, oral history has been taken, any medical consultations have been returned to the office and we're okay to proceed, now you can go intraorally. Okay. So this is going to include an extraoral and intraoral exam. Within the intraoral exam, that includes dental charting. Okay. After you're done your extraoral, intraoral exam, for your partially edentulous clients, the supervising dentist will do an exam and provide any type of radiographic prescription. Okay. After that is returned, when the images are produced, okay, you as a denturist need to do a radiographic interpretation and the dentist needs to do their diagnosis report. So for all partially edentulous clients, you need what's called a basic kit. Okay. And a basic kit comes with a mouth mirror, some pliers, an excavator, an explorer, and some of them also have a perio probe. For your denturism assessment, there's a form in the record called DD assessment form, and it includes the extraoral exam tab and the intraoral exam tab, an existing denture assessment tab. If the patient has no existing denture, then answer the first question that says, does the patient have a denture? And you answer no. Okay. And it also includes charting. So in the extraoral exam, you're looking at the overall symmetry of the head and neck. You're going to be palpating, okay, certain points, and those observations you'll be following in clinic. And again, you'll have an opportunity to do this and practice this in clinic before seeing patients in a few weeks. You'll do a full intraoral exam.